Stay with us, Smokey. Stay with us! We gotta get the hell out of here!
All right, so Stan here, back and doing another video here. We're going to talk about the difference between a medic in World War II and a medic during the global war on terror, and particularly what I carried between 2008 2012. In that time, the level of care a medic could provide expanded greatly from the World War II era, where really his job was just to control bleeding and provide fluids long enough to keep a wounded soldier alive to get back to a field hospital, and some other rudimentary care. But they train these guys so fast, there wasn't a great deal of care they could do, at least at a basic medic level. In those times, there was basically two levels of medics: a senior medic and kind of an entry level, and they carried different levels of equipment, which I'll show in the video. I'll edit in some pictures, but at a basic level, he would have carried various bandages, tourniquets, sulfonamide powder, which is like it's an antibiotic powder. It stops infection by the bacteria eats that instead, and rather than attacking the cells, and kills it. So now it's like that white powder you always see like in World War II movies. They're dumping on a wound. Clamps and IV fluid, and that's really about it. Probably other rudimentary ointments and Tylenol, real basic stuff. They couldn't do a lot. They couldn't intubate. They could, do airways, do crikes, cut open someone's throat to do that sort of stuff with the level of technology we have now. Guys improvise, would do things they could, they learn from maybe the doctors if they spend any time with them back at the field hospital, later the MASH. But their bag was very small, as you're going to see here in a moment. And so they were really limited with the level of technology and training they had. And that didn't change much going forward. In Korea, the medics had the real advantage of the MASH and the helicopter. That greatly changed the survivability of a wounded soldier from World War II to Korea. It increased significantly due to a few things. One being medical evacuation by helicopter. No helicopters in World War II. Came in the very tail end of the war on an experimental level. So Korea, you could call in a medevac. We call that a 9-line medevac today. And they would fly in and pick up a wounded soldier from an aid station and take him back to the MASH, the Mobile Army Surgical Hospital. Hopefully you've seen MASH. If you haven't, you've been living under a rock for 50 years, go watch it. But that speed of getting back to primary care, where there were surgeons, really increased the survivability. In World War II, it could take hours, via ground ambulance to get back through the lines, which were always moving forward to a hospital. And because of that survivability, that golden hour that you have, you often didn't get back to a hospital within that golden hour that we talk about in field medicine and paramedic world. So that really increased the level of care in the Korean War. The advent of body armor, widely being used during the Korean War, also helped. And of course, medicine learned a lot from World War II, and techniques and things improved. And that would be the same thing in Vietnam. Technology was improving. The medic's bag improved quite a bit. The bags in Korea were still kind of small. The M3, I don't have one to show you, but I'll put some pictures in. Over the World War II bag, it was better. And then we went to the M5, which I'm going to show you, because that's what I used, which was still old when I was using it, but I liked it, so I used it. But the M5, you could carry a lot more. And once again, helicopters, better hospitals, and the situation for the medic has always been improving and evolving really ever since the Vietnam War. The medical technology has made leaps and bounds. So, and today it's changed. In the I got out in 2012, so it's been 11 years, and it's changed since then. But I thought it'd be neat to show you some of the technology that I still have, that I brought back with me and that I kept in my bag versus some of the things that I have around here that in my collection from the Korea World War II era. So without further ado, we're going to spin around and check that out. Okay, so what we have here is some basic kit here that would belong to a medic during the World War II era. So he would have been carrying IV fluids and glass bottles, same during the Korean War. Probably extra water for the wounded, so in addition to water for himself, so you'd see him carrying extra canteens. Basic field dressings, you can see here. This one's dated 1944. That's just a basic pressure dressing there. Individual soldiers, this was kind of like the original IFAC, individual first aid kit, and the medics would have had these too. They came in these metal tins to kind of keep them protected and waterproof. And inside that tin, I'll show you. Let me set the camera down. Okay, is your pressure dressing, and then that sulfonamide packet I was talking about, and that's that antibiotic designed to help prevent infection. So that would have been inside that tin there. I talked about how they would have carried some different basic medications. Here's some burn ointment, and this actually belonged to my grandfather. He was a medic in Korea. That was still floating around his house, along with his first aid manual. This one's from the Korean War. I can see how thin it is. It's nothing compared to like what you would see now. And then some basic ACE wrap type bandages, some larger dressings. I don't have any to show you, but they would have had some basic rope tourniquets and morphine syrettes. You've watched Band of Brothers, you've seen those little tubes, jab the guy with it and squeeze it, and then they would have taken that morphine syrette and they would have attached it to his uniform, so that way the doctors back at the aid station field hospital would know how much morphine had been administered. But let's look at his kit. So as you can see, he's got a standard pistol belt, but his suspenders are much different. They're these large, thicker suspenders than you would see the standard infantryman carrying. And the reason for that is that you could attach a litter straps to these, so two medics could bear the weight of a wounded soldier and help carry him on that litter. And so this was designed to bear that weight a little better. And then you would have had 1 to 2 of these small satchels. Kind of hard to see here, but there's not a lot of room in that. It's only about 2.5, 3 inches wide, and not even quite a foot tall. And that's what he had to carry his medical gear in. So not a lot in comparison to. We're going to go over here and look at the M5 bag. So stand by here. Another big thing back in World War II versus even Korea, Vietnam, and onward was no Red Cross armband on the uniform or on the helmet. They really got rid of that because while the Germans would often honor the Geneva Convention, which said you couldn't shoot at medical personnel, and hence why they would put that on there was to just say that they were not combatants. The Japanese definitely did not, and the Vietnamese and so forth didn't either, so that made you a target. And so we don't really define ourselves as medics anymore. We try to just blend in and look like anybody else. So this would have been a helmet I would have worn, and as you can see, I don't have my camo cover on it, but no Red Cross because that's just a big target. So here's the M5 bag. These first appeared in Vietnam. I used one that was given to me by a Vietnam medic. Unfortunately, someone stole it while I was in the military, so I don't have it anymore. This is the one I replaced it with. We had newer bags that were, had all the Molly stuff on them. I was just sentimental and liked this bag, so that's what I used. But there were different ones, and you didn't have to use the issued one. A lot of my fellow medics didn't like the issued ones. They were just kind of awkward, so you could kind of buy your own aftermarkets and so forth. So this thing, it's just got a lot of stuff. It's not necessarily 100% organized how I had it back then, but on top here you see a halo chest seal, and this is certainly something they did not have in World War II. And if someone had a sucking chest wound, dealing with it back then, there probably wasn't much a World War II medic could do to deal with a sucking chest wound and a collapsed lung. But this here would, you would apply this over the wound to stop that tension pneumothorax from taking place, or help slow the process down. And if you're not a medical person, but forgive me, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about, but go get yourself trained, because you should know. But this would allow you, if the bullet penetrated the chest cavity, air is going to get in there, it's going to collapse the lung and obviously make breathing very difficult, and it's going to start pushing everything to one side, because your chest cavity is a vacuum, and that will impede blood flow. It will impede respiration. So this would allow a medic to help stop or reduce that, giving it time for surgery to take place. Here we have a what is called an Israeli dressing. Simply, they're designed and made in Israel, but it is a pressure dressing. They're really ingenious. It combines a dressing and like an ace wrap together with a clip, and what that does is it allows you to put a whole lot of pressure onto a hemorrhage really fast and stop the bleeding. And these are excellent compared to, say, the older style field dressings like these, and anyone who's been in the military will recognize these, especially older ones. These simply use fabric tails that you tie, and then you can put a windlass through if you want to really crank it down. They're a bit more cumbersome than the Israeli, and so these are top notch. IV fluids, IV kit there with the tourniquet. That's not to stop bleeding. That tourniquet there is to just get your veins to pop up, so it makes it easier for me to stick you. And I would carry multiples of those. Different fluids, you have blood expanders. This is just standard saline solution to help with dehydration. I gave a lot of those out for people that are dehydrated. BP cuff, carried a BP cuff. A lot of times we just do basic clinical checks and things, but even with a wounded soldier, it's important to know blood pressure and vitals. CPR mask. I know that's compact. It's nice to have. In the ambulance, it also have a bag, BVM. You've probably seen those in hospital shows. So this right here is another technology that did not exist back in World War II that any World War II medic would have loved to have, and that's a Hemcon bandage, Chitizen dressing. And so what this does is when it reacts with blood, it makes it clot really fast. Quick clot, you've probably heard of it, which is the powder you pour on. Well, this is similar. It's a bandage that has that quick clot type material on it, and it will cause clotting to take place really fast. That's great for stopping the hemorrhage. So another item here, CM splints. These are great. They're a foam flexible splint. I recommend these for any first aid kit. You can make any sort of splint with these. You can make a C collar in a pinch. If you have someone with a neck injury and you don't have a proper C collar, you can make one out of that. They're just fabulous to have. So those are essential to any first aid kit, in my opinion. In here, I'd have just basic meds, aspirin, glucose if I had someone with a diabetic emergency, burn gel, alcohol prep pads, that sort of stuff. Ice packs, of course, tape. This is another big dressing here. Same with this. Lots of dressings. Tourniquets. Back in World War II, they would have had some simple rope tourniquets. certainly would have gotten the job done, but not as good as what we have now. Bear with me, just let me kind of pause here. Stand by. Okay. So this is what we call a CAT tourniquet, a combat application tourniquet. There's some different ones. There's Ranger ratchets, which have more steel than plastic, and they kind of use a ratcheting type mechanism. But this tourniquet you can apply really quick. We would do drills to, make sure we can apply them fast enough. And minimum, we always carry 2 on our person at all times, usually in our cargo pockets of our uniform. That way they were quickly accessible, and then of course had extras in the bag. If you applied a tourniquet, you would always write on the forehead when it was applied. That way the surgeon would know if he had enough time to then save that appendage after the tourniquet had been applied. So I talked earlier about airways. Here we got a nasal pharyngeal airways. You put that up the person's nose, assuming there's no potential for a cranial injury of any sort, and that maintains an open airway. You'd put a little bit of like jelly lube on there and then put it up their nostril, and that maintains an open airway. And so, like I said, that's not something that a World War II medic would have really had access to. So I got some different medications in here, like epinephrine and stuff for anaphylaxis, that sort of thing. Not really something they would have had back then, at least at a basic medic level. So, and one last cool device I'll show you before I wrap this up is the sternal IO. So, probably wondering what is IO? Well, IV, is intravenous, meaning you're giving the fluids through the vein. Well, our IO is interacesis. Sorry, it's been a while since I've said that word. And this is where you're putting fluid directly into the bone marrow because of a burn, and you can't use the veins anymore, unfortunately, or because you've missed. You can't find a vein, and someone critically needs fluids. Our standard was if you missed twice and it was critical situation, you went to the IO. This is kind of a fun, not so fun device. So if I were to open this up and take this end cap off, you would see a series of tiny little needles with a large needle in the center. You take this, you can kind of see here, you're going to put that target patch right on the sternum. You see that's the neck. So this is going right here, right at the base of the neck, where kind of like where your clavicle is. And you're going to put that target patch down. Okay. Then you're going to take that cap off. You're going to line up those little needles in the center so that the center needle is going to go through the center of that target patch. And then you're going to put all of your weight into this, and it's going to go pop, and it's going to shove that needle into your sternum bone. And then that you would hook your IV to it, and that fluid is going to go directly into the bone marrow of the sternum. Not a very pleasant process, but more than likely if you're using this on someone, they probably aren't aware of what's going on anyway. Did show us a video of medic school where they tested one of those on someone who was just totally okay. Did not look very fun. So we had practice ones we used it on each other. It didn't actually jab us. So that's just a little bit of medical technology from World War II to, well, at least 10 years ago. So hope you enjoyed it. My rambling on about medical stuff, and I'll be back soon with another video. Die!